discussing about growth failure and how it is important to evaluate growth failure using simple tools. So what we are doing to do is to discuss about very basic aspects of growth failure evaluation. Then we will move forward more towards the SGA part. We'll start off with this first case, a 15-month-old girl who presented to us with complaints of growth failure. Birth weight was 4 kilograms. And as we can see from the chart that there was a tapering in the height in this girl. She was born a tall girl, and then over the next 15 months or so, her height was coming down over time. Now, based upon this, it was considered that she has fallen by around 4 to 5 percentile lines. We need to evaluate. And on evaluation, basic workup was normal. She had mild metabolic acidosis. And based upon that, she was diagnosed as renal tubular acidosis, started on soda bicarbonate. Now, do we agree with this diagnosis, Dr. Anurag? Do you think this patient who has fallen down out of the curve, do you think it looks like RTA?
No, I think that the child was little hyper the weight in utero.
Yeah.
When she came out, now the genetic factors are working. She's probably channeling down.
Yeah. This is a very, very important thing to remember. What we are seeing is that this child was actually an infant of diabetic mother. And if we look at the mid-parental height on top of it, the mid-parental height was actually on the lower side. So this child should have been short, but was born large because she had an infant of diabetic mother. And this downward growth, which is happening here, does not mean that she is actually losing height or she is failing to thrive. This is clearly more like a cash down growth, which Dr. Anurag has said. And therefore, if we had carefully evaluated, we would have not have unnecessarily evaluated and investigated this case in that regards. So this is one case in which we diagnose a pathology when there was no pathology present. Now, second case, if we look at it now, and when we followed this child had a normal growth from that perspective. The second case is a 4-year-old boy with failure to thrive. And what we can see that he had rickets, he had normal basic workup. There were lots of vitamin D which has been given to this child. And when he came to us, he had metabolic acidosis and renal calcification. So Dr. Tambe, do you think this child actually had nutritional rickets or was there something wrong?
This is not a nutritional rickets because we are given the multiple dose of vitamin D,
yeah.
But the child is still having the problem. And the pH is on the acidotic side with renal calcification.
Yeah.
It may be the vitamin D resistant type of rickets, most probably in the.
So this is again the second, the opposite of the first picture. First case, we were unnecessarily investigating. The second case, this child had all the signs. He had refractory rickets. He should have been evaluated right at the beginning. But what was done, it was missed and he presented with nephrocalcinosis. So again, we have a situation in which we are missing pathology. So when we are evaluating growth failure, on one hand, we might be unnecessarily diagnosing somebody as pathology. On the other, we may be missing pathology. Now, growth failure is common. 2.5% of all is the usual prevalence. Dr. Pratik, how many of them are physiological? So if you have 100 children coming to a pediatrician, how many of you do you think will have a pathological cause? So I would say around 80% will be physiological. And when we say physiological, it is familial or constitutional delay of puberty and growth. And 10% will have significant pathology. 10% will be borderline. Now, the whole talk over the next 20 minutes will focus how you can decide who is physiological and don't do evaluation and who is pathological in which evaluation is required. This is what we're going to discuss about in that perspective. Now, all of you can go and have a look at our website where a lot of these presentations are already available. Videos are available in that. We have got our books, which are also available out here. And we have also got a mobile application available on both Android and iOS stores. We'll show how it is very easy to interpret growth based upon that perspective, and our courses are also available. This program is sponsored by Novo Nordisk, and we thank them for this sponsorship. Now, we'll start off with the first part of the talk, which is the approach to growth failure. Now, what are the causes of growth failure? This is our recent publication in Indian Journal of Pediatrics about approach to growth failure. Broadly speaking, it can either be physiological or pathological. When we say physiological, it is constitutional delay of puberty and growth or familial short stature. Within pathological, it could either be a primary disorder in the growth plate or a disorder in the environment. Within environment, it can be nutritional or endocrine. Now, when we say nutritional, we are talking about systemic illness, tuberculosis, malabsorption, malnutrition, celiac disease. And when we talk about endocrine, we're talking about growth hormone deficiency, hypothyroidism, Cushing syndrome, and other factors. Now, if we look at our etiology, and this is from our publication in JPEM, in which we looked at 812 children with growth failure, most of them in this setting were physiological, but common causes which we encountered included celiac disease, around 10 to 15%, hypothyroidism, GHD. Now, of course, this is a referral bias from a pediatric endocrine center. But from a pediatrician perspective, I would say hypothyroidism, celiac, systemic illness will be common and most important thing. So the key questions to answer by a pediatrician when they are seeing a child with growth failure is it really short stature? If it is short stature, is it physiological or pathological? If it's pathological, is it primary or secondary? And finally, is it nutritional or endocrine? So we'll go on to one each question and how we can answer that. Now, first question, how do you decide that somebody is short? So how would you come to a criteria that somebody is short, Dr. Naveen? What will be the way to go forward?
So we need to plot the height with the growth chart. Whether he is going after the completion. So in case if it is like basically when it's less than 3 standard deviation, then we consider to be growth.
Yeah. So generally speaking, what we talk about is that when we talk about things like cutoffs for, let's say, sugar levels, we say what sugar level will cause complications. When we say thyroid, we say TSH more than 10 will cause long-term complications. But height, we don't have data as to how you can define that. So it is a statistical definition. But what we try to look at it, what is the likelihood of a pathological cause? Because primary aim is not to miss a pathology. So we looked at what height standard deviation score, you will know this is pathological and this is physiological. So what we found that if height is above -2 standard deviation score, only 1 in 40 child will have a pathology. As it goes below -2, it becomes 1 in 2. So it becomes 20 times more likely to be pathological. And if you really go to -3 and below, it is 80% will have pathology. So the severity of growth failure will tell you whether it is physiological or pathological, and this is how you can evaluate. And we found that the height SGS was the best predictor of pathology. So based upon that, if height is more than -2 standard deviation score, nothing to worry. If height is -2 to -3, wait and watch. If it is less than -3 standard deviation, immediately evaluate. Now, how do we get this score and everything? We'll discuss about that later on. Now, other thing is to look at the growth chart. Now, which growth chart to follow? There are a lot of debates and which one to follow. But this is our recent publication, which we did with regards to the various charts in the community and the overall the clinic. And what we have shown is that IAP 2015 is the best chart in Indian children compared to WHO or Dr. K.N. Agarwal's chart. Because if you talk about WHO, it will label more children as short, but those children will be normal. While if IAP labels, the chance of pathology is more. So we should follow IAP chart. And how do we go? Now, if you have a child like this, do we need evaluation? Definitely this child is very short. He needs evaluation. So if the height is below the first percentile, evaluation is required. What about this child? Do you think this requires evaluation, Dr. Prabhat? The dot below the child was not growing, required evaluation. Then we have got the final situation. Do you think this child will require evaluation? Manoj? So this could be a third situation, which is very important. This child is currently not short, but if we backtrack on the data, he is not growing at all. So if the child is not growing at all, it may be a sign of a serious disease, like maybe even craniopharyngioma or hypothyroidism. So if you have a child who is very short and not growing at all, requires evaluation. So this is why growth chart becomes very, very important in that regards. The next question is it physiological or is it pathological? And this is very important. And all you have to look at is 3 things which will tell you the diagnosis. One is the growth chart. The second is the pubertal development. And third is the bone age. Now, if you do these 3, 90% of cases, you will know it is physiological or pathological, and your diagnosis will be made from that. When we look at growth chart, you have to look at what is the absolute status of the child, how is the child compared to the family, as well as how is the child compared to the population. How to look at parental expectation? We all know about the mid-parental height. So Dr. Sayan, how do we calculate mid-parental height? So the average adult male height versus the female height is 13 centimeters behind. So you average the child's height, parent's height at 6.5 in that situation for a boy and subtract 6.5 for the girl. This will be your target height, and we'll show how this becomes important. The next issue is to look at how is the child compared to the parent's height, and we will use a specific term which is known as corrected height standard deviation score, which will let you diagnose whether it is familial short stature or not. Final issue is whether there is a nutritional component or not. So the most important thing to here to look at is the height and weightage. Now, what is a height age? Height age is the age at which the current height becomes the 50th percentile. So this child is 10 years old. He is equivalent to 6 years old. His height age is 6 years. If you have a nutritional cause like malnutrition, malabsorption, celiac disease, the weight will be predominantly affected. Height will be secondarily affected. So your weight age will be much less. If it is an endocrine cause, the height age will be more effective. And what we have identified is that BMI standard deviation score is the best marker of nutritional status, and we'll discuss about that in that regards. Let's start with the first case. 12-year-old girl. This is the growth chart. So Dr. Anurag, what do you think? This child is short or not?
That's the genetic potential.
Yeah. So if you look at just the chart, looks slightly short below the percentile. Now the genetic potential. So the mid-parental height is here, 163, 150. So you get 150. And then you have plus minus 6 centimeters, which gives you the range. Now then you can backtrack from there to see how the growth is happening. So now, is he short for the family? No. So this, yeah. So he is short for the population, but he is not short for the family. So this is familial short stature. You don't need to do a single investigation. The most important investigation in a short child is the growth chart. If you do the growth chart properly, you can evaluate. Now, next issue, what is the height age? You draw a line from here till the 50th percentile, draw a line from there, and where it meets becomes the height age, and where it meets, you become the weight age. So if you do that, you will know that this child is equivalent to 9 years old. He is having a normal height age and weight age, which is similar, but for the family, the child is normal. Now, often what happens is that we get all these calculations and people get a bit intimidated. So what we have done is that we have developed a growth interpreter in which if you just put these data, basic data, date of birth, height, weight, you will get an output with like this, which will plot it, and it will give you an interpretation whether the child is normal, short, constitutional, or endocrine obesity, and all those things will come up, and we'll show it later subsequently in different situations. So this is familiar short stature, no evaluation required, physiological cause. Now, second most important thing is to look at pubertal development. And the problem is most of us do not assess puberty. So what I'm trying to say is that forget about complexities, just remember two things. Look at breast stage 2 and breast stage 4. Why is breast stage 2 important, Dr. Vibha? And breast stage 4? So you are very close to menarche. So if you know breast stage 2 and 4, your work is done. Breast stage 2 is simply, you have got 20 centimeters from here to grow. So you basically palpate between your thumb and finger. If you find resistance, this is breast stage 2. If there is no resistance, this is lipomastia. This is what you can identify from there. From here, the height will increase. And breast stage 4 is only 10 centimeters height, which means that you are very close to vaginal discharge and periods. So you have to be cautious. Breast stage 4 is the formation of a secondary mound. Then after that, menarche happens, the height gain is 5 to 8 centimeters. So if you have a child who is 130 centimeters as breast stage 2, you can say, okay, 150 is the likely height. Breast stage 4 becomes 140 and menarche becomes 135. So always correlate the height with what the pubertal status is. Do not just say, okay, age is 10 years, age has no meaning. You have to compare to the puberty, then only you will be able to know exactly how to go forward. This is important. And for boys, the most important thing is testicular volume. And if testicular volume is above 4 ml, it means puberty. More than 10 ml means real growth spurt is starting to happen in that setting. Now, next important thing is bone age. And bone age is something which is often considered to be one of the most difficult situations because most radiologists do not give appropriate reports. There's often confusion on that regards. So what we have done is we have developed a very simplified way of assessing bone age, which on an average takes around 1.5 to 2 minutes for somebody who has never done it also by a simple way. All you have to do is to compare a region of interest. There are 5 areas that you have to focus only. Original methods talk about 13 or 20 areas. We have cut down to 5 areas based upon regression analysis. And what we have shown that if you compare that, so this is basically the middle finger, the proximal finger, middle phalanx. So there are 3 fingers out here which you will compare: radius, ulna, and thumb. These are the comparison which you do. And once you do these comparisons, you would be able to identify the exact bone age, and this has been validated both for experts as well as non-expert users compared to standard method, and you will get a specific bone age. So now bone age is very, very easy. This you can get it through our application very easily in that regards. And we have also evaluated and validated with regards to these in a setting of a clinical evaluation. And how do you correlate bone age and how do you diagnose constitutional delay of puberty and growth? So what really is constitutional delay in puberty and growth? What do you think, Dr. Tambe? What is the problem in these children? So their development is slow. So they are slow to start, doesn't mean that they will end short. While familial is, they are bound to be slow and they will always remain on the lower side. So how would you diagnose CDGP? That's a challenge. You diagnose familial by comparing to the family. How will you diagnose CDGP? By looking at puberty or a surrogate marker of puberty, which is bone age. So what we found is that if your height standard deviation score for bone age is more than -2, it is constitutional delay of puberty and growth. So if your height is good for bone age, it is normal. Don't worry about that. And this is what we have put in the algorithm, and we'll discuss about that in that setting. So let's come to this case. 13-year-old boy. This is the height and this is the weight. So what do you think is happening, Manoj, here? This child is short or not? No, is he short or not? That's first. He's not short. He's obviously short. Is he short for the family? This is the height age, this is the weight age. So he is equivalent to 9.5 years. At 13 years, he's 3.5 years behind. Next question is family. Now the familial height is not bad. It is 170 centimeters. So he's good. So now what happened was that this child was diagnosed as growth hormone deficiency because his growth hormone level was found to be low. Do you think this is growth hormone deficiency? Why?
Because
this is peak growth hormone. This is stimulated growth hormone. I think what's important thing to remember here that if it is growth hormone deficiency, the height would be much lower. It can't just be a borderline height. And second, we have not looked into puberty. So this child is prepubertal. 99 out of 100 of these children will actually be constitutional delay of puberty and growth. They do not require growth hormone stimulation. No need for workup in that setting. So again, correlate for the puberty and bone age. So as I said, first step is the child short. If the growth chart is normal, nothing to worry. Is he short for the family? This child is, then you evaluate further. Is he short for the bone age? No, nothing to worry. This is CDGP. So this is a classical picture. Now, if you look at our interpreter, you put the data and you will find that it says height SDS for bone age is -1.06. You don't have to do any calculation. It will give you the data and it says likely constitutional delay of puberty and growth based upon various outputs which are available. So you don't need to do any evaluation. If you don't plot this much, you just put the data, 5 seconds, you will get the result like this, that this is likely CDGP. In that setting, no evaluation required. Now, the next issue is it a primary growth failure? Now, once we know he's short, is it primary or secondary? When we say primary, it means skeletal issues. So you look at the child's faces, you look at the proportion, and you will identify that very easily. What do you think is the diagnosis here, Dr. Prabhat? So this is a classical picture of achondroplasia. You have got a short limbs and the trunk is more. So this is very classical presentation. Which genetic abnormality would you identify, Dr. Sayan? FGF receptor defect will be there, and that we can identify in that regards. Now, the next question after it is primary is it nutritional or is it endocrine? And this is important because for nutritional, you have to do TTG, you have to do tuberculosis workup, RTA workup. For endocrine, you have to do growth hormone stimulation and other evaluation. So for this, most important thing to look at is the child having lean phenotype or a plump phenotype? The most important thing to look at in a short child is actually the weight, not the height. If you have a lean and a short child, this is nutritional. If you have a plump and a short child, it is endocrine. I think this is something which is easiest way to put it. So height, age, weightage will tell you. And we have found that if your BMI standard deviation score is low, which basically means you are lean, this will give you an objective parameter to identify nutritional cause in that perspective. And this is where you can evaluate and highlight in that perspective. So we have got this child, 10-year-old girl, height is 120. And this is the workup, LFT, RFT normal, TSH normal, TTG normal, IGF low, basal growth hormone low, diagnosed as GHD. This is the growth chart. Dr. Anurag, what do you think? Is this a nutritional pattern or an endocrine pattern? What is more affected, height or weight? Weight is more effective. So although the diagnosis has been made of GHD, what we are seeing here is that the weight is more affected. So this does not look like GHD. And what happened was that there was no response which was happening to growth hormone. So then the child came to us, and when we did evaluation further, we found, and this is the app interpretation also, it talks about likely nutritional pattern. So this is a classical nutritional pattern which is there. Now, when we worked up further, we found that the IgA levels were undetectable. So TTG was falsely found to be negative. So in this setting, if you have nutritional factors, don't do growth hormone evaluation. You think of other possibilities, and IgA level will become important from that perspective, and the diagnosis changes. So if you just had looked at the growth chart, your diagnosis will become very, very clear and evident from that perspective. What about this child? 8-year-old boy, height is 100, weight is 18. The workup showed a TTG which was borderline elevated. And then a diagnosis was made of celiac disease. But this is the chart. Dr. Tambe, what do you think? Is the height more affected or the weight more affected?
Height is more affected than weight. So in most cases, it is endocrine.
So this is unlikely to be celiac disease. However, we have seen that you can have celiac disease with normal weight also, but if somebody is plump, it is unlikely. So this is unlikely to be celiac. And remember, no biopsy was done. So if the TTG level is less than 200, you have to do a biopsy. That is a big message. You do not go without biopsy. Otherwise, the diagnosis will be a confusing picture. So this was labeled as celiac, no response to gluten-free diet, but came to us. We did a growth hormone test because he looked like endocrine, short and plump, and he was diagnosed as GHD. So again, the basic evaluation, if you look at the growth chart, you will get the correct diagnosis in that perspective. A big message is that if you are considering celiac, unless the TTG is more than 200, you have to do a biopsy. Don't ignore biopsy in that perspective, and that becomes important. So based upon all these parameters, we have developed a very simplified algorithm which has recently been published. And this is relevant from our resource poor perspective because this prevents a lot of unnecessary workup, and it's mainly clinical. First question, is the child short? Height SDS more than -2, observe, nothing to be done. Height SDS between -2 to -3. Now, we have kept a thing, if it is less than -3, very significant, evaluate. -2 to -3, look for familial short stature. Is the child short for the family? No. That means it's familial, nothing to worry. Next step, is the child short for bone age? No. If he is not short for bone age, this means constitutional delay. Again, no workup. If you are short for both bone age and short for family, need workup. Look for systemic disorders, look for facies, all those factors. Do screening test. Now, what are the screening tests? Very basic. CBC, ALT, creatinine, electrolytes, TTG. Now, we say TTG in everybody. We do not say that if you have normal weight, don't do TTG, because we have seen patients who have normal weight and still they can have celiac. Blood gas below 3 years. Don't do blood gas in everybody. So if your age is less than 3 years, then only RTA should be considered. Thyroid is important. If this is abnormal, you get the cause, and otherwise you follow for 6 months. If the growth is low, or there are other features or the height is very slow, you start workup right away. And if there are no problems, then you go for IgA and karyotype in girls. Now, girls, Turner syndrome is an important consideration. Any short girl, no problems you have found, look for Turner syndrome. That becomes important. And if all this is normal, then only do a growth hormone stimulation test. Growth hormone is a pulsatile hormone, as Manoj was saying. So a single value has no role. You have to do a growth hormone stimulation test, but don't do unless everything has been ruled out. So this workup will actually help out in avoiding unnecessary investigation in that setting. Now, what we have done now, that this looks very complicated, is that we have developed everything in the app. So if you just put those question answers in the data, you get the interpretation from there. And we just published it recently in Journal of Pediatric Endocrinology and Metabolism. And this is the profile of cases which were there. And what we found was that there was a 98% concordance from what the app said and what was the final diagnosis. So if you put your data, you've got a huge chance that all the diagnoses will be correct. There may be 1 or 2 issues which may be there, but it gives you guidance in terms of evaluation. So it's a very simplified tool, easy to use. Whatever I have taught in the last 25 minutes, you can just put it on your finger button and you can get the answer immediately. That's what we have developed in that perspective.